Yeah, back like boomerangs and spinal cords. It is the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University, WilmU Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick, our producer Alex Ruane pulling strings behind the scenes. Good to see you, folks. And winning isn't everything; it is the only thing. And winning is something that's been a little hard to come by for the Sixers these past couple games. We've had 3 games since the last podcast, 2 on national TV. One went our way, one didn't. The next game was lost, and then they lose by 50, or they were down as much as 50 against the Charlotte Hornets, Noah. But good to see a bounce back win with against a team you would like to see them win against is Doc Rivers, Milwaukee Bucks. But a lot to dissect here and break down. But fair or not fair, the Sixers are better when Paul George and Joel Embiid are both in the lineup. And that was indicative clearly in that Charlotte game where you didn't see those guys. You see the prolific performance from each of them in that Bucks game. Paul George, the 9 threes, the 32 points, Joel Embiid, 24 in the first half. So it's good to have 2 guys who are making $200 million who were available to play for you. I think that's easy math that we can draw conclusions to, Noah.
Yeah. Charlotte game was as ugly as it gets. Tyrese Maxey, a season low 6 points. Not sure any individual Sixer really played well outside of maybe Jared McCain in garbage time of that outing. And sure, it was a tough situation for the Sixers. They flew out earlier than planned because of the inclement weather. Game got moved up 4 hours, but still a rather embarrassing, dismal showing. And all 3 stars were fantastic last night with what Nick Nurse admitted was like a much needed bounce back. They needed to win that game, needed to get back on track. And it's the best Paul George has shot the basketball as a Sixer. I mean, he tied the franchise record for 3-pointers in a game. Danny Green and Tyrese Maxey, the only 2 others to make 9 threes. And it was funny. He admitted he was kind of chasing number 10. He said Kyle Lowry was in his ear near the end about, hey, like keep firing him up, try to get to double digits, which would have been his career high. Didn't get that done, but still, I believe 9 for 15 is outrageously good. And it was one of those nights for him where you're reminded of prime Paul George. It doesn't really matter whether it's tightly contested or wide open. Obviously, has that great length and fluidity and just natural, smooth shot making talent that shined big time against the Milwaukee Bucks. So good for the Sixers to get back on track, but I think they are fully aware they need to be more consistent and definitely do not want to replicate anything remotely similar to the performance in Charlotte. They're determined for that to be the last such game this season.
25 and 21, they sit 6 in the East, but still tightly contested there, top to bottom from 11 all the way up to number 2. But after going 2-4 on the homestand, it's good to see them get a win like that at home, where, like you said, everyone performed well. Joel Embiid had the fantastic first half. They're up 22 in the fourth quarter. And surprise, surprise, a little return to his college stomping grounds, so to speak, with the garbage time Charlotte game, and then 5 threes against the Bucks here in a win. Jared McCain showing some life, and I just bring that up ahead of the Maxey, George, and B discussion because we had talked about him in the last podcast at length. Just the fact that, and maybe in previous podcasts as well, that he can't find his rhythm. Is he going to be someone they think they can get some value for in a trade? What's his progress been like? Where has the consistency been? And just a game or two putting together some good moments on back-to-back games, suddenly it got you talking about Jared McCain a little bit more and excited about maybe him putting a string of good games together.
Yeah, it's a little bit cliche when you hear coaches say, there's no such thing as garbage time, every minute matters, but some cliches are often repeated for good reason. It really seemed meaningful that Jared McCain finally saw a couple long range jumpers go through the hole in Charlotte, and that's absolutely the best game he's played last night against Milwaukee. And I think everyone was happy just to see him having fun again. I think he's someone who's naturally smiling and positive and charismatic, and there's been plenty of glum moments for him this season, and it's been very difficult to adapt to irregular minutes and to try to figure out his body, and the rhythm and consistency have absolutely been poor for the most part. So he and everyone else is hoping this is a really significant springboard for him, and I don't think it's unrealistic to expect that might happen. I think every shooter goes through ups and downs, but there's a decent track record at this point that at his core, Jared McCain is a pure shooter. I mean, the college numbers we all know, I think, 40 plus percent from 3-point range, 90% at the foul line. And then you saw last year, he can hit them from very deep and in a bunch of different ways at the NBA level. So the Sixers would love if he's able to rediscover some of what he showed as a rookie, and last night could be a massive step if that ultimately does happen.
One of those games for the 76ers for sure. Their first time cracking 139 points in regulation this season. They never trailed, like I mentioned, up 22 in the fourth after being down 50 against Charlotte. So, man, a much different 76ers team. But Paul George and Embiid will do that to you. And if Embiid's not in the lineup, you don't get the type of alley-oop that you get from Tyrese Maxey, where Embiid rises up and brings it down on the business end of the alley-oop. Because, I sometimes lament the reporters talking to the coaches and the players too much during the game. The walk-off interviews, the in the dugout stuff for baseball. Sometimes it's a little too much. But if they don't interview Tyrese Maxey as he's heading to the locker room at the end of that first half against the Bucks, you don't get the fact that Maxey felt like this is the first time he's seen Joel catch an alley-oop since his second year in the league, or you don't get Maxey telling Joel before the game that he was going to throw him a lob. So it's just fun seeing the Sixers being so over the top, out of control when Joel throws that down. Like the bench erupts, Maxey's hopping up and down on the court. It's just worth the price of admission, particularly being a Sixers fan.
Yeah, no, that's, for me, one of the most memorable moments of this season. It was very funny. Tyrese Maxey literally jumped for joy. Like as soon as Joel Embiid threw it down, Tyrese Maxey looked like a 5-year-old kid who got what he wanted for Christmas or whatever. Youthful imagery you want to use. It really looked like they were kids out there, just getting a kick out of what had just happened, and big smiles for I think a couple possessions after it. And of course, it's just one moment, but it's obviously pretty consistent with Joel Embiid's greater willingness to occasionally rise above the rim, to play through contact, and to really not shy away from very much at all physically. And of course, the scoring dominance has been elite as of late. This is 5 straight 30-point performances. So he continues to trend in an awfully encouraging direction. And that's obviously a huge deal when we're talking about the big picture for the Sixers. But yeah, that's one of the moments of the season without a doubt. And whenever, I guess in baseball they do the video yearbook, whatever the equivalent of that is for the Sixers, that should be featured prominently.
You mentioned the 5 straight 30-point games. I mentioned the 24-point first half. We see, like you said, a lot of his performances have you believing that he's trending in the right direction, trending upward. And it doesn't hurt to have that type of performance on the national stage as well, just to kind of continue to get the word out that, I'm going to show up on these big games too. And I'm going to show you that it's not a fluke for what you've been seeing on the highlight reels or, reading in the box scores against, his former coach and Doc Rivers, who lauded some serious praise Joel Embiid's way, saying that Embiid was the most talented player that he's ever coached. And we take some of that with a grain of salt because Doc Rivers is kind of use a bit of hyperbole sometimes, but he does have incredible perspective when it comes to coaching and having coached a lot of talented players throughout his career. Particularly, the one that is not playing right now for the Bucks and Giannis. So you coach Giannis, but you still consider Embiid. You've coached KG and Paul George and Ray Allen and I forget who he had exactly on that Orlando team. Maybe Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill were on that team, but so it says a lot, and yeah, he's coming back in town, and yeah, he also talked about how he's still in the area, and I'm sure he wants to be able to move around the area and not be harassed by people and whatnot. But that's some serious praise. Did you take it with a grain of salt, or did you just take it at face value?
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think it's an outrageous thing to say, and I think you're also right to frame it in the context of Doc Rivers likes to try to win over a room, but yes, like Joel Embiid's talent, I think, is the appropriate word if you're trying to sort of pinpoint what makes him great compared to other Hall of Fame or future Hall of Fame players. He started playing basketball as a teenager. He's incredibly skillful for someone, over 7 feet tall. And I think Doc Rivers, to his credit, also does have the behind the scenes understanding of how great Joel Embiid can be, even when he's grinding through pain and injury. You think back to that Atlanta series, I believe game 1, no one really expected him to play. He goes out there and, has 30 plus points. And Rivers, I think, understands that the peak version of Embiid is unstoppable as a scorer in the way, few players have been in NBA history. So definitely an eye-catching sort of statement, but as Doc Rivers' public comments go, I think not one that should honestly be super, super controversial. I think he's entirely fair in acknowledging Joel Embiid's great talent. I think it's kind of a no-brainer that he's up there as, one of the more talented players this league has ever seen when you consider his background and you consider how skilled he is, and then also the fact that he's put all that together to win an MVP and be on a Hall of Fame path here.
And I forgot about Kawhi too. Kawhi in LA.
SGA.
So, SGA. There you go. So interesting comments, but winning over a room is definitely something that Doc Rivers has a talent at, or definitely applies his skills that way. But a good perspective there, Noah, for sure. Let's pay some bills here on the Sixers Talk podcast and show some love to our title sponsor, Wilmington University. We wouldn't be what we are without them. Do you have college credits but no degree? Complete your degree at Wilmington University, where your dream is our mission. Learn more at wilmu.edu. Let's continue the conversation, Noah, and talk a little bit more about one of Doc Rivers' former players, and that's Paul George. So 9 threes, 32 points. He was cooking. You talked about the contested shots he was making and a couple of heat checks mixed in there. But just, man, I mean, basketball can be very beautiful at times. And when he's out there with that silky smooth movement and the jumper, and it's all clicking like it was here against the Bucks, you can see why people fall in love, fan bases, players look up to him, and he's at the top of some of these younger players' lists as like one of the best players who ever played, or one of their favorites who ever played. But of course, we are kind of prisoners of consistency and prisoners of what have you done for me lately. And yes, this performance will carry over a bit and go a long way for Paul George into his next performances. But as it stands, Noah, are we more likely to see these type of consistent performances? Not to say he has to make 9 threes or score 32 points, but just, more 8 of 12s, more 6 and 10s, more performances where you can depend on him to be a productive member of the offense rather than maybe a minus in the box score.
I guess I'd lean a little bit in that direction. Of course, all contingent on
On
health.
health. Yeah.
He's firmly in his mid-30s and had multiple lingering injuries last season, as we noted many times, and of course was feeling fresh because he sat out the first leg of the back-to-back in Charlotte.
No back-to-backs in the playoffs, though. We can get there.
Yep, could work in the Sixers' favor for sure. But yeah, I think for me, he's by and large looked like his best self as a jump shooter this season. I think it appears the ability to score around the rim has declined. He's not as explosive as he once was, isn't regularly getting into the paint and scoring productively there. But yeah, I think it's increasingly appearing that the drop off as a jump shooter last year was largely due to just, difficulty adapting to new circumstances. And of course, all those injuries he was playing through. I also think Sixers just need him to be a high volume 3-point shooter because as they're currently constructed, still not uncommon to see them get outscored by a significant margin beyond the arc. If you look, game over game, I believe they're still bottom half-ish of the league in both 3-point accuracy and 3-point frequency, although, both numbers got a nice uptick last night. So yeah, they, of course, know he can hit those tough mid-range jumpers, but I think for their offense, they also need him to be unashamed about firing up some of those quick ones early in the shot clock and understanding that sure he wants to play within the flow of the game and the rhythm of the offense, but sometimes they need him to just jack them up and be a little selfish, especially when it's in those lineups that do not have Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, and VJ Edgecombe is sort of the number 2 next to him out there on the floor. So I think all of that's been trending in a good direction. I don't think they'll, bank on him being a guy who delivers, multiple 30-point performances in a series or what have you. But I do think they'll hope and expect that he can shoot a bunch of threes and, make 38 to 40% of them. I think that looks viable and definitely has been, I think, one of the bright spots of the first half of his season, in addition to the fact that he's just avoided serious injury, that he's been a plus defender for the vast majority of nights. The 3-point shooting is very important for the Sixers, and I think that looks like a positive aspect of having Paul George on this team.
Sixers with a season high 22 made threes against the Bucks. They also had 18 against Milwaukee on November 20th. So yes, the 3-point shot was falling all the way around and much needed in a win like that for sure. And one thing I wanted to touch on, Noah, as we continue to move on, is we got a bit of that prime rookie of the year, top flight rookie matchup with Cooper Flagg and VJ Edgecombe a couple games ago. We also got Con Knipple and VJ Edgecombe here against Charlotte. I would definitely give the edge to Edgecombe in the Mavericks game, but Knipple, having seen him earlier in the season when the Sixers played Charlotte, I definitely didn't think his feet were quick enough or that he could play defense at the clip that he needed to at that time. But he has really gotten a lot more comfortable on both ends of the floor in Charlotte. Did you pay attention to that matchup between him and VJ? VJ had a couple of nice blocks, dunks, and just the athletic stuff that we've come to see. Some good shot making. Although, yes, they got dump trucked against Charlotte, but individually, what did you think of that matchup? Did you pay attention to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a ton of head-to-head, and as we said, pretty much every Hornet was better than every Sixer. But no, I think Con Knipple, without a question, is going to be in the Rookie of the Year conversation until the very, very end of this year. I mean, such a polished player and such a great shot maker. And yeah, VJ Edgecombe had an off game in Charlotte. I think he was 2 for 11, something like that from the floor. So yeah, we'll be tuning in. I think every time he's up against one of these other guys in the race. I thought Edgecombe last night honestly brought some excellent energy in the opening minutes. Had a great block on Bobby Portis, who's much, much taller than him. But then he
Yes.
got into foul trouble, which has, happened a few times this season and part of the rookie growing pains. So, I think, it's always fun, to see the competitive side of him come out when he's facing, one of these other top rookies. And I think Konkanippel, if you don't watch the Hornets a lot, he's part of why they're a really entertaining team to watch. And I think if you're happen to not watch the Sixers, I think you get a lot of entertainment from watching PJ Edgecombe as well.
Edgecombe, of course, selected to the Rising Stars game challenge, whatever you want to call it. I think he's with Team McGrady, if I'm not mistaken.
I think I saw Vince Carter picked him.
Vince Carter, okay.
Yep.
All right, well, there you have it. So something to watch for with your starting all-star, Mr. Tyrese Maxey. Maybe Joel Embiid will backdoor his way in, as well as VJ Edgecombe playing in the sophomores, freshmen, and then the G League team. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's a mini tournament. There's 3 teams comprised of the 21 NBA selections, which is a combination of rookies and sophomores, and then there's 7 G League Rising Stars. So I think it's usually a fun event. I think there's usually a greater level of effort than the All-Star game in recent years. So provided he's healthy, I think that's a good reason for Sixers fans to tune in. Of course, it was a bummer last year that Jared McCain was selected, but injured and unable to participate. So Edgecombe, though he has noted he does not plan to do the dunk contest, I imagine will intend to throw down a highlight dunk or two in the Rising Stars setting.
For sure. And before we get out of here, some housekeeping, Noah, if you could help fans make sense of the Sixers bringing in Charles Bassey, what role he might play, how that plays into the two-way contracts, and who does what, when, where, why. If you could shed some light on that, please.
Yeah, so Charles Bassey was the 53rd pick in the 2021 draft back in the day. Honestly, I liked a lot of what I saw from him as a rookie. I think the brightest night of his rookie year was a strong outing when the Sixers beat Jokic and the Nuggets while shorthanded in Denver. And he's bounced around a bit since then. He's unfortunately continued to have injury problems with his left knee, but he's a talented center at 25 years old, and I think it makes sense that he's still in the NBA orbit. So the Sixers signed him to a 10-day deal. It's a little convoluted, but basically that gets their roster up to 15 players, and then that enables them to keep Dominic Barlow and Jabari Walker on two-way contracts for the time being, and essentially kick the can down the road in terms of having to make a decision on Barlow and Walker, whether they get converted. They're still able to be on the roster as two-way players, and that's advantageous just in the sense that the Sixers can do their business in all likelihood at the trade deadline, and then figure out where things stand with Jabari Walker and Dominic Barlow. In order for that to happen, they'll have to do another 10-day. That could very well.
I was just about to say, it seems like they need another 10-day to get to the trade deadline.
Right, but that could just be re-signing Charles Bassey to a second 10-day contract, which probably makes sense. So Bassey was assigned to the Blue Coats. Does not seem like there's any short-term plans to have him, thrown into the NBA rotation mix. But Sixers and Daryl Morey obviously like him and figured it couldn't hurt to have him, back in the organization. And then there's this, notable subplot of the whole two-way contract situation and not needing to, do anything in the immediate future with Barlow and Walker. Of course, in my opinion, both those guys look like they're worthy of standard NBA contracts. But who knows how it's going to shake out for the Sixers at the trade deadline,
right?
How many players they're going to bring in, how many guys are going to go out. So they in all likelihood will give themselves some flexibility with that situation. But to me, Barlow and Walker have just been outstanding. And honestly, if we wind up giving out mid-season grades, I think both those guys are in line for very high ones, just given how they've performed relative to their role and expectations and all that. So Charles Bassey back in the mix, and TBD on the futures of Barlow and Walker, but pretty clear the Sixers like both of them, and I think would be quite happy if it's viable to keep them around and convert them to standard contracts down the line.
The business of the business is business, and the Sixers are always playing the game and trying to maximize where they can with this salary cap and the restrictions and the things surrounding it. So not surprising to see them make a savvy move here, and we'll see how it all plays out, as Noah mentioned, particularly with the trade deadline looming and how the roster shakes out with who's here and who's not. But let's see if they can get some more wins. Some definitely opportunities lost here over the past several games that you hope the Sixers can right the ship, string some wins together here. Sacramento, New Orleans, the Clippers, Golden State, and the LA Lakers, that is, in the next 5. So some home games mixed in there, as well as a nice road trip of 5 games ending in Portland. So come on out and support the fellows before they leave town for a bit, heading into February. But we will be here every step of the way on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. This has been the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University, Wilmington Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick, and our producer today, Alex Ruane. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.